I'm Victoria Ashford, 31, a senior investment advisor at Sterling Financial Group in Denver. That crisp October morning at Willowbrook Manor's bridal suite, surrounded by my closest friends, I was exactly 27 minutes away from marrying the love of my life, Ethan Rodriguez, my partner of 5 incredible years. At 11:33 a.m., as my maid of honor Natalie was adjusting my cathedral veil one final time, my phone lit up on the vintage vanity table. 3 consecutive notifications that would transform my perfect fairy tale morning into an absolute financial nightmare. Every single one of my bank accounts had been frozen solid. My own parents, Helena and Frederick Ashford, had orchestrated a complete financial ambush to destroy my wedding and force me to abandon Ethan. They had absolutely no clue who they were dealing with. Before we continue, shout out your location in the comments. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. Our community is growing, and tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. I grew up in the exclusive hills of Mountainview Estates, Colorado, in a sprawling Tudor-style mansion that practically screamed generational wealth and old money prestige. My father, Frederick Ashford, built his empire as the founding partner of Ashford Associates, one of the most prestigious wealth management firms in the entire Rocky Mountain region. From my very first birthday, he treated our family's financial empire like his personal kingdom, and every single member of our household was expected to be a loyal subject in his carefully orchestrated dynasty. My mother, Helena, came from the distinguished Pemberton family lineage, and she ruled our social calendar with the same iron fist that my father used to control our bank accounts. A former Miss Colorado runner-up who married into even more money and status, she spent her entire adult life orchestrating every detail of my existence to maintain and elevate our family standing in Denver's elite social circles. The right private schools, the right country club memberships, the right charity galas, the right summer internships that would look impressive on college applications. Absolutely nothing in my childhood was ever about what I actually wanted or what would make me genuinely happy. And Ashford never settles for anything less than absolute excellence became the suffocating motto that haunted every single day of my teenage years. The pressure was absolutely relentless. Perfect grades at the exclusive Pinecrest Academy, perfect posture at cotillion classes, perfect behavior at every social function we attended as a family. Any deviation from their rigid expectations resulted in lengthy lectures about family reputation, future prospects, and the weight of carrying the Ashford name with dignity and purpose. When college application time arrived during my senior year, they had already mapped out my entire future without consulting me once. Harvard Business School, followed immediately by joining my father's firm as a junior partner, eventually inheriting the family business and marrying someone from an even more prestigious financial dynasty. It was all planned out like a corporate merger rather than a young woman's life choices. But I had completely different dreams brewing beneath their suffocating expectations. During a secret rebellion that lasted several months, I quietly applied to multiple universities across the country, including the University of Colorado's finance program right here in Denver. When I announced my decision to study finance locally instead of following their predetermined path to Harvard, the arguments lasted for weeks and created an icy tension that hung over our mansion like a dark cloud. Finance is merely a stepping stone to law school and then politics, my father eventually rationalized, allowing himself to accept my choice only by viewing it as a temporary detour. You'll come to your senses after your undergraduate degree and realize that Ashford Associates is your true calling. I never did come to my senses, at least not in the way he hoped. Instead, I absolutely thrived for the first time in my entire life. I could finally breathe freely without their suffocating expectations weighing down every decision I made. I formed genuine friendships with people who appreciated me for my personality and intelligence, not just my family's bank account balance or social connections. I discovered that I had a natural talent for investment strategy and portfolio management, and the delicious irony wasn't lost on me that my father's relentless financial education had given me the perfect foundation for a career he never intended me to pursue independently. After graduation, I dropped another bombshell during one of our formal Sunday dinners. I've accepted a senior position at Sterling Financial Group, I announced calmly, watching my parents' faces transform from mild curiosity to absolute horror. The silence in our dining room was absolutely deafening. My mother's sterling silver fork clattered against her bone china plate, creating an echo that seemed to last forever. Sterling? Financial? My father finally managed, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. Victoria, we've already discussed this extensively. Your corner office at Ashford Associates has been waiting for you since the day you were born. This is about family legacy and responsibility. I didn't apply for a position at your firm, I replied simply but firmly. I want to build my own career based on my own merits, not nepotism and family connections. That explosive dinner conversation established the pattern that would define our relationship for the next several years. Constant disappointment from them, increasingly manipulative attempts to control my choices, and my growing determination to maintain firm boundaries around my independence. Still, I maintained regular contact because they were my parents, and despite all their controlling behavior, I held on to hope that they might eventually learn to respect my autonomy and accept my life choices. Then, everything changed when I met Ethan Rodriguez at a charity fundraiser for children's literacy in downtown Denver. He wasn't even remotely close to the type of man my parents had always envisioned for their daughter. This story took hours to research and craft, so if you're enjoying it, a quick subscribe would truly make our day. Now let's get back to it. Ethan was a talented architectural engineer who had built his own sustainable design firm, Green Space Innovations, completely from scratch. He came from a humble middle-class family in Pueblo, Colorado, no prestigious family name, no trust fund, no membership at the exclusive Ridgemont Country Club where my parents spent their weekends. What Ethan did possess was incredible creativity, unwavering integrity, genuine kindness, and this amazing ability to make me feel completely seen and valued for exactly who I was, not who my family expected me to become. Our first coffee date at a cozy downtown cafe turned into weekly dinner dates, which gradually evolved into weekend getaways to the mountains, and before I knew it, he was practically living in my downtown loft apartment. With Ethan, I could finally be my authentic self. Not the polished, perfect Ashford heiress, but just Victoria, with all my quirks, dreams, insecurities, and genuine personality traits that I'd kept hidden for years under my family's rigid expectations. When my parents finally met Ethan during our traditional Thanksgiving dinner at the mansion, their disapproval was so thick you could practically cut it with a knife. My mother's smile never once reached her eyes throughout the entire evening, and my father interrogated Ethan about his business projections, sustainability market trends, and 5-year expansion plans as though he was conducting a hostile corporate takeover rather than getting to know his daughter's boyfriend. "He seems nice," my mother said afterward in that particular tone that meant exactly the opposite. "But darling, is he really someone but the appropriate background and social standing for our family? Think about your future children and the opportunities they'll need." My father was characteristically more direct and brutal. "Love doesn't pay for private school tuition or country club memberships, Victoria. Think practically about what kind of life you're actually building here. The Rodriguez name carries no weight in our social circles." What they completely failed to understand was that Ethan's refreshing perspective on money and success was exactly what had drawn me to him in the first place. He viewed money as simply a tool for creating a meaningful life, not as a weapon for controlling people or a scorecard for measuring human worth. He worked incredibly hard, but also knew when to step back and actually enjoy the fruits of his labor. This concept was absolutely revolutionary to someone who'd been raised in the suffocating Ashford household, where money was always about power, control, and social positioning. 3 years into our relationship, during a romantic weekend getaway to Aspen, Ethan proposed with a stunning, custom-designed ring featuring a rare Montana sapphire that he'd worked with a local artisan jeweler to create. It perfectly captured my personality. Unique, beautiful, and completely different from the massive traditional diamond my mother had always assumed I'd receive. I said yes without a moment's hesitation, feeling more certain about this decision than anything else in my entire life. Breaking the engagement news to my parents went exactly as I anticipated it would. My mother immediately launched into elaborate discussions about proper venues, exclusive guest lists that would include half of Denver's social elite, and menu selections that would reflect our family's sophisticated tastes. My father cleared his throat meaningfully and mentioned prenuptial agreements before even bothering to offer his congratulations. That will absolutely not be necessary, I said firmly, cutting off his legal suggestions before they could gain momentum. Don't be naive, Victoria, he countered with his typical condescending tone. Every Ashford marriage in the past century has included proper financial protections. It's not personal, it's simply smart business practice and family tradition. Ethan and I will handle our financial arrangements our own way, I replied, drawing a clear boundary that I had no intention of allowing them to cross. That prenuptial agreement became the primary battleground for the next several months. My parents offered to contribute significantly to our wedding expenses, but their generosity came with extensive strings attached. They wanted complete approval authority over the venue selection, the guest list composition, the menu selection, the floral arrangements, and even my wedding dress choice. Each time I politely but firmly refused their controlling conditions, the promised contribution amount mysteriously decreased, as though they were negotiating a business deal rather than celebrating their daughter's happiness. I honestly didn't care about their financial games. Ethan and I were proudly paying for the majority of our wedding celebration ourselves, using our combined savings and careful budget planning. We chose Willowbrook Manor in Golden, Colorado. Absolutely beautiful and elegant, but not ostentatiously expensive or flashy. We invited friends and family members who genuinely mattered to us and supported our relationship, not business associates or social connections designed to impress other people. We planned a celebration that authentically reflected our values and our love story, not my parents' social aspirations or need for public recognition. Throughout the entire 6-month planning process, the tension steadily escalated to unbearable levels. My mother called me daily with suggestions that were really thinly veiled demands disguised as helpful advice. My father regularly checked in about the prenuptial agreement that I had already refused multiple times, acting as though I simply hadn't understood his previous explanations, rather than deliberately rejecting his controlling demands. Each conversation left me feeling emotionally drained, frustrated, and increasingly determined to marry Ethan on our own terms, without their interference or manipulation. But they were my parents, and despite all their controlling behavior, I still harbored some naive hope that they would eventually come to accept and respect my choices, maybe even learn to appreciate Ethan for the incredible man he truly was. The week before our wedding, something strange happened. My parents seemed to finally accept defeat and surrender their control efforts. They confirmed their attendance at both the rehearsal dinner and the ceremony itself. They made dinner reservations at an upscale restaurant for the night before the wedding. My mother even sent me a surprisingly heartfelt note about being happy for my future and proud of the independent woman I had become. I should have recognized this sudden change as a massive red flag. The Ashfords never surrender control. They just changed their tactics and waited for the perfect moment to strike. But I was so relieved by the apparent peace and so focused on final wedding preparations that I allowed myself to believe they had genuinely come around to supporting my marriage to Ethan. I had no idea they were planning the most devastating financial ambush of my entire life. The morning of our wedding dawned absolutely perfect. Crystal clear blue skies, temperature in the comfortable mid-70s, just enough gentle breeze to make the aspen trees surrounding Willowbrook Manor dance elegantly in the sunlight. From the floor-to-ceiling windows of the bridal suite, I could see the florists arranging cascades of white peonies and dusty miller along the stone pathway where our guests would soon be walking to witness Ethan and me exchange vows. "Mimosa time for the beautiful bride," announced Jessica, one of my bridesmaids, entering the spacious suite with a silver tray of champagne flutes filled with bubbly orange cocktails. Rachel and Amanda followed close behind, already dressed in their gorgeous dusty rose gowns, carrying professional makeup kits and steaming cups of coffee from the venue's private cafe. Natalie, my maid of honor and closest friend since our college sorority days, supervised the entire morning with her signature clipboard efficiency and infectious energy. Hairstylist just texted she's running about 10 minutes behind because of unexpected traffic on Highway 6, but our makeup artist is already setting up her station in the corner suite. We're still perfectly on schedule for your 11:30 ceremony. The next 2.5 hours passed in a delightful blur of professional styling, champagne toasts, and endless laughter as we shared stories about Ethan and me throughout our relationship. My wedding dress, an absolutely stunning A-line creation with intricate beadwork and delicate cap sleeves, hung gracefully by the large windows, casting tiny rainbow reflections across the hardwood floors of our getting ready space. "You look absolutely radiant," Amanda said softly, as our hairstylist carefully pinned the final pearl-encrusted hairpiece into my elegant updo. "Ethan is going to completely lose it when he sees you walking down that aisle." That's exactly when my iPhone began buzzing insistently against the marble surface of the antique vanity table. I almost ignored the notification completely. What could possibly be important enough to interrupt this perfect, magical moment that I had been dreaming about for months? But some instinct, some nagging feeling in the back of my mind made me reach for the phone. The notification on my screen made my blood run ice cold. "Account access restricted. Please contact Sterling Bank customer service immediately regarding unusual activity on your account." Frowning with growing concern, I quickly opened my primary banking app. The screen displayed a message I had never seen before. "Access denied. Account temporarily frozen." My heart started racing as I frantically tried logging into my other accounts, my personal savings, my investment portfolio, my business checking account, even my credit cards. Every single one showed the exact same terrifying message. "Victoria, what's wrong?" Natalie asked immediately, noticing my expression had shifted from radiant joy to absolute panic. "I can't access any of my accounts," I whispered, my voice sounding distant and hollow even to myself. Jessica looked up from touching up her lipstick in the mirror. "Maybe it's just some kind of system glitch or maintenance update. Banks do that sometimes on weekends." I was already frantically dialing Sterling Bank's emergency customer service line, my hands shaking so badly I could barely press the numbers correctly. The representative who answered was professionally apologetic, but absolutely firm in her explanation. "I'm showing a comprehensive legal hold placed on all accounts associated with your Social Security number, Ms. Ashford," she explained in a calm, practiced voice. "The hold was processed approximately 45 minutes ago and includes all banking, investment, and credit facilities." "A legal hold?" I repeated, feeling the room start to spin around me. "That's completely impossible. By whom? Under what authority?" "The request originated from Frederick Ashford, authorized through existing power of attorney documentation on file," she continued. "You would need to formally revoke that authorization or obtain a court order to restore access to your accounts." As I hung up the phone in stunned disbelief, more notifications began flooding my screen like a digital avalanche of financial destruction. The wedding venue payment had been reversed and flagged as fraudulent. The catering company's final payment had been declined and returned. The photographer's transaction had been disputed. The florist's check had bounced. Even our honeymoon reservations showed cancellation notices. "They're trying to completely destroy my wedding," I whispered, as the horrifying realization dawned with absolute clarity. "My own parents are financially sabotaging the most important day of my life." As if summoned by some cruel cosmic timing, my phone immediately began ringing. My father's name flashed ominously on the caller ID screen. With trembling fingers, I answered and put the call on speaker so my bridesmaids could hear what was about to unfold. Victoria? His voice came through, crystal clear, coolly professional, as though he was conducting a routine business negotiation, rather than destroying his daughter's wedding day. I believe you've discovered some financial irregularities this morning. How could you possibly do this to me? The words caught painfully in my throat, barely escaping as a whisper. This is for your own protection and future well-being, he replied with that same condescending tone he'd used throughout my childhood. This Rodriguez boy has clearly influenced you against your better judgment and family values. A marriage without proper financial safeguards and family approval is simply not something I can allow to proceed. Allow? I repeated, my voice rising with a mixture of fury and disbelief. I'm 31 years old, Dad. You don't get to allow me to do anything anymore. As long as your financial accounts remain connected to family trusts and investment portfolios, I have both the legal authority and paternal obligation to protect our generational wealth from impulsive decisions. The solution is quite straightforward and simple. Cancel this inappropriate wedding immediately, come home to the mansion, and we'll resolve this situation like reasonable adults. My bridesmaids exchanged looks of absolute horror and disbelief. Natalie instinctively moved closer to my side, placing a supportive hand on my shoulder. "And if I refuse?" I asked, though I already knew exactly what his answer would be. "Then you'll proceed with this financial mistake entirely on your own, without a single penny of family support or access to any accounts," he said, his tone softening slightly, in a way that somehow made his ultimatum even crueler and more manipulative. "Victoria, we genuinely want what's best for your future. In time, you'll understand that everything we're doing today is motivated by love and concern for your well-being. What's best for me is marrying Ethan Rodriguez, the man I love more than anything in this world," I replied firmly. "Then you'll do so as a financially independent woman with no family resources whatsoever," he concluded coldly. The line went completely dead. I sat motionless for several long moments, phone still clutched in my hand, tears threatening to completely ruin the makeup that had taken over an hour to perfect. The beautiful wedding day I had planned so meticulously for months was collapsing around me like a house of cards, all because my parents couldn't bear the thought of losing control over my life choices. "What do we do now?" Rachel asked quietly, breaking the heavy silence that had settled over our bridal suite. I looked around at my friends' concerned, sympathetic faces, at my wedding dress still hanging in the sunlight, at the chapel visible through our window where Ethan was undoubtedly waiting for me, probably wondering why the ceremony was running behind schedule. "We need to get Ethan up here immediately, and then we need to figure out how to save my wedding day and make my parents regret every single decision they've made this morning." "Don't let him see the dress," Amanda protested as Natalie quickly texted Ethan to come to the bridal suite immediately. "I think traditional wedding superstitions are the absolute least of our concerns right now," I replied, attempting humor but hearing my voice crack with emotion. When Ethan knocked cautiously on the door and entered, his face immediately shifted from excited anticipation to deep concern as he took in my tear-streaked makeup and the tense atmosphere filling the room. Handsome in a charcoal gray tuxedo, he rushed directly to my side, completely ignoring whatever wedding traditions we might be breaking. "What happened, sweetheart?" he asked gently, taking my hands in his. "You look devastated."
I explained the entire catastrophic situation in halting sentences, showing him the locked banking apps and forwarding him the messages from vendors about reversed payments and bounced checks. With each detail I shared, his expression grew darker and more incredulous. "Your parents actually did this today?" he repeated slowly, less than 30 minutes before our ceremony was supposed to begin. The disbelief in his voice perfectly mirrored what I had felt when first discovering the financial sabotage. "They gave me an ultimatum," I continued. "Cancel our wedding and come home, or proceed completely cut off from all family money and support." Ethan ran his hand through his carefully styled hair, visibly processing the implications. "Can they legally do this? Just freeze everything like this?" "With that power of attorney, unfortunately, yes. At least temporarily," I admitted. "I could eventually fight it through the courts, but that doesn't help us today, right now, when we need immediate solutions." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the full scope of what we were facing. No venue payment, no catering, no photography, no flowers. Essentially, no wedding. At least not the celebration we had spent months planning and saving for. "We should postpone everything," Ethan finally suggested, though I could see how much it pained him to say those words. "Regroup, sort out this financial mess through proper legal channels, and do this right when your parents can't interfere." I was about to reluctantly agree when Natalie stepped forward decisively. "Absolutely not," she said firmly. "That's exactly what they're counting on, you giving up and giving in to their manipulation." "But the vendors, the payments," I began. "I'll cover everything on my credit cards right now," Natalie interrupted, without hesitation. "We can figure out repayment arrangements later, but we're not letting them win." Before I could protest, Tyler, Ethan's best man, appeared in the doorway. He had followed Ethan to the bridal suite when the delay became apparent. "I overheard some of this," he said apologetically. "Count me in to help however you need. I've got substantial savings we can use." One by one, our closest friends stepped forward with offers of financial support. Jessica could handle the photographer on her business account. Rachel's husband could cover the bar service through his company. Amanda volunteered to coordinate with the florist about modified arrangements we could afford. Grace Martinez, our wedding coordinator, who had been quietly listening from near the doorway, cleared her throat diplomatically. "If you can provide alternative payment methods within the next hour, we can absolutely proceed with your ceremony. But I do need something concrete to maintain our reservations and vendor commitments." Natalie was already pulling out her wallet, extracting multiple credit cards. "Put the major expenses on these cards immediately, whatever it takes." As our support network mobilized around us, making phone calls and arranging emergency payments, I stepped away to the small balcony attached to our bridal suite. I needed a moment to think clearly, away from the chaos and emotional intensity. That's when a memory surfaced, something crucial I had nearly forgotten in the panic of the morning. 3 years ago, when I had first achieved significant success in my investment career, my parents had been genuinely impressed by my financial expertise. In a rare moment of parental approval, they had asked me to help restructure their retirement portfolios, moving their accounts to a more sophisticated investment firm that specialized in high net worth clients. I had meticulously set up their new accounts, ensuring seamless transfers and optimal portfolio allocation. As the authorized financial advisor managing the transition, I had saved all their account information, passwords, and security credentials in my secure cloud storage system, standard practice for ongoing portfolio management. I hadn't accessed those records in over 2 years, respecting their financial privacy the same way they had never respected mine. But now, staring at my phone, I realized I still had complete access to their retirement accounts as an authorized user and financial advisor. The irony was almost too perfect to believe. My father had always insisted on teaching me about financial power and strategic thinking. Today, he had weaponized that power against me, but he had made one critical miscalculation. He wasn't the only one in our family with access to significant financial leverage. I quickly called Lydia Chen, a family law attorney who specialized in financial disputes and had handled several high-profile cases involving power of attorney abuse. What you're describing sounds like clear financial abuse, Lydia confirmed after I explained the situation. Using an old power of attorney to freeze accounts specifically to prevent a wedding could constitute breach of fiduciary duty and emotional distress. If I were to place a temporary hold on their retirement accounts as their authorized financial advisor, citing suspicious activity for investigation purposes, what would be my legal exposure? I asked carefully. Since you're not withdrawing funds, just restricting access temporarily, and you have legitimate concerns about their financial behavior based on what they've done to you this morning, your liability would be minimal, she explained. You could argue you noticed irregular account activity and implemented protective measures pending verification. And I have documentation of everything they did to me this morning?
That strengthens your position considerably. This isn't retaliatory. It's protective action based on demonstrated financial misconduct. After ending the call with Lydia, I returned to the bridal suite where Ethan was coordinating with Tyler about vendor payments. I have an idea, I announced to the room, but I need to know that everyone here supports what I'm about to do, because once I take this step, there's no going back. I explained my plan to access my parents' retirement accounts and place a protective hold, just as they had done to me. The room was quiet as everyone processed what I was proposing. You want to freeze their retirement funds? Ethan asked slowly. Victoria, I understand the impulse, but isn't that escalating the situation even further? They escalated first, I pointed out. They didn't just cut me off. They actively destroyed our wedding day. They need to understand that actions have real consequences. What's your end game? Tyler asked, practically. What do you hope to accomplish? Leverage, I replied simply. Right now, they hold all the power because they have our money frozen. But if I can freeze their access to millions in retirement funds, suddenly they have skin in the game. They'll be motivated to negotiate and undo what they've done. Ethan sat beside me, studying my face intently. Are you sure about this? Once you do this, your relationship with your parents changes forever. They already changed it forever when they sabotaged our wedding day. I said firmly, this isn't about punishment. It's about showing them that I'm not the helpless little girl they can manipulate anymore. After another moment of consideration, Ethan nodded slowly. If this is what you need to do, I support you completely. With my friends coordinating the wedding rescue and legal backing for my plan, I sat down at the vanity table and opened my laptop. It was time to show Frederick and Helena Ashford exactly what their daughter had learned about strategic financial warfare. Using my stored credentials, I logged into the Pinnacle Wealth Management portal, where my parents maintained their retirement accounts. As their registered financial advisor, I still had full access to implement protective measures on their portfolios. My finger hovered over the temporary restriction button for several long seconds, knowing that once I clicked it, I would be declaring full-scale financial war on my own parents. I pressed it. The system immediately generated an automated notification to the primary account holders, informing Frederick and Helena Ashford that unusual activity patterns had triggered security protocols, freezing access to approximately $6.2 million in retirement asset, pending verification procedures. The verification process would require approval from all authorized parties, including me. It's done, I announced to the room. Their entire retirement portfolio is now frozen, just like they did to us. Ethan squeezed my hand supportively. How long before they realize what happened? Probably until this afternoon when they try to check their accounts, I replied, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and nervous anticipation. Despite the morning's chaos, we managed to salvage our wedding ceremony. The processional began nearly an hour behind schedule, but as I walked down the aisle on Tyler's arm, since Ethan's best man had gallantly offered to escort me when my father's absence became glaringly obvious, I felt a profound sense of liberation rather than loss. Our vows carried deeper meaning in light of the day's events. When Ethan promised to stand by me in prosperity and adversity, In times of joy and times of trial, I knew he had already proven those words through his unwavering support during the crisis. As we exchanged rings, the conspicuously empty front row where my parents should have been sitting barely registered in my consciousness. By the power vested in me by the state of Colorado, I now pronounce you husband and wife. As Ethan's lips met mine, enthusiastic applause erupted from our guests. We had done it! Despite everything, we were married! The reception that followed had an electric energy, a celebration tinged with triumph over adversity. Our closest friends, now aware of what had transpired, formed a protective circle around us, while other guests sensed something dramatic had occurred without knowing the specific details. At 3:47 p.m., during our first dance as a married couple, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. My father's name appeared on the screen, and this time, his timing felt perfectly appropriate rather than devastating. "Excuse me," I told Ethan, stepping away from our reception to take the call privately in the venue's garden. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Frederick's voice practically vibrated with rage through the speaker. "I just received notification that our retirement accounts are completely inaccessible." "How absolutely terrible for you! Having your financial security unexpectedly compromised without warning must be incredibly distressing. I can't imagine how that must feel." The pointed parallel wasn't lost on him. A long silence followed before he spoke again, his tone shifting to the calculated negotiation voice he used in business dealings. "This is completely different from our situation, Victoria. We acted to protect family assets from an impulsive decision. You're committing deliberate financial sabotage."
Actually, I noticed suspicious activity in family accounts, specifically the unauthorized use of an outdated power of attorney to freeze my personal assets on my wedding day, and implemented standard protective protocols pending investigation, I replied smoothly. That's the official explanation I provided to Pinnacle Wealth Management, and it's exactly what I'll tell any financial authority who inquires. Another silence, longer this time. I could practically hear him recalculating his position and strategy. "Your mother wants to speak with you," he finally said, though his voice carried less certainty than before. The phone transferred, and my mother's voice came through, tight with barely controlled emotion. "Victoria, what are you doing? This isn't like you to be so vindictive and cruel." "Actually, Mother, this is exactly like me. I'm a financial advisor who protects assets when I observe questionable activity. I learned strategic thinking and decisive action from the best teachers, you and Dad." "We were trying to protect you from making a terrible mistake," she insisted, her voice cracking slightly. "What you were doing was attempting to control my life through financial manipulation," I corrected. "There's a significant difference between protection and control." My father took the phone back, and when he spoke again, there was a new note of grudging respect in his voice that I had rarely heard directed toward me. "What are your terms?" he asked, cutting straight to the negotiation he'd recognized was inevitable. "It's quite simple," I replied, borrowing his own phrasing from our morning conversation. "You immediately restore full access to all my accounts. You transfer the exact amounts you caused to be reversed back to me to reimburse our friends who covered the wedding expenses. You provide written revocation of any power of attorney documents you hold regarding my finances. Once those steps are completed and verified, I'll release the protective hold on your retirement accounts. And if we refuse, then I maintain the protective hold while pursuing legal action for financial abuse and breach of fiduciary duty. Lydia Chen at Denver Family Law is already prepared to file the necessary paperwork. The choice is entirely yours." 24 hours later, we met at the Broker Restaurant in downtown Denver, a neutral location with private dining rooms. Both sides brought legal representation, myself with Lydia and my parents with their longtime attorney, Robert Sterling. The negotiation was surprisingly brief. Faced with documented evidence of their financial sabotage and the reality that I had successfully frozen their retirement funds, my parents agreed to my terms. By the end of our meeting,
All my accounts were restored, our friends were reimbursed, and the power of attorney was formally revoked. As we prepared to leave, my mother caught my arm gently. "He really does love you," she said quietly, glancing toward Ethan, who was speaking with Lydia near the restaurant's entrance. "He does," I confirmed, "and I love him. That should have been enough for you both from the beginning." Something shifted in her expression, not quite full acceptance, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. "Will you see us again?" she asked, and I heard genuine uncertainty in her voice. "That depends entirely on whether you can respect the boundaries I've established. I'm not cutting you out of my life, but our relationship will be on my terms from now on." 6 months later, Ethan and I hosted our first dinner party in our new home, a beautiful craftsman bungalow in the Highlands neighborhood that we'd purchased entirely through our own mortgage qualification. Among our guests, sitting somewhat awkwardly but genuinely trying to engage, were my parents. I watched from the kitchen as my father discussed sustainable architecture trends with Ethan, and my mother actually laughed at one of Jessica's stories about her recent promotion. They weren't the center of our social circle, but they were present, one element in the diverse mosaic of relationships we'd built together. Later that evening, as our guests departed and Ethan loaded the dishwasher, my father approached me on our small front porch. "You've built something good here," he said, looking out at the city lights rather than directly at me. "Different from what I envisioned for you, but undeniably good." From him, this constituted extraordinary praise. "You outmaneuvered me completely," he continued, and I caught a note of professional admiration in his tone. "You used my own strategies and turned them against me. I didn't see it coming." "I learned from an excellent teacher," I replied, echoing our confrontation from months earlier, but this time the words carried acknowledgement rather than accusation. As we stood watching Denver's skyline, I realized we had both learned valuable lessons through our financial warfare. He had discovered that I couldn't be controlled by money or intimidation. I had learned that true wealth wasn't about financial power, but about the freedom to choose your own path and the courage to defend those choices. The relationship I'd built with Ethan, the friendships that had sustained us through crisis, the boundaries I'd established with my parents, these represented a different kind of inheritance than anything Frederick Ashford had ever planned to leave me.
What would you have done in my situation? Would you have frozen your parents' retirement accounts as I did, or found another way to handle their financial sabotage? Drop a comment below with your thoughts, and if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about standing up to family manipulation. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to be controlled. Remember, your life belongs to you, and you have every right to defend it. Got 2 more amazing stories lined up for you. If you dug this one, you're gonna love what's next. Go ahead and click